Hi, it's Mike Stephenson here. In this video today, we're going to take a look at the latest release for June 2023 for Serverless 360 and some of the features that we've added to it. Serverless 360 is an enterprise-grade management and monitoring tool for Azure that's intended to make it easier for your support teams to do day-to-day operations of your solutions, to free up the time of your experienced developers and Azure experts so they can deliver new value for the business. We have four modules within the product, which you can see here. So we've got business applications, which is really about that day-to-day operations of the components in Azure. Business activity monitoring is about support and operations of business transactions, so like process and order versus manager logic app. The Azure document is about providing auditing and automation of documents that you need generated for the solutions that you've built in Azure. Cost analyzers intended to help you focus on efficiently spending money and managing cost. So before we jump into June, let's take a look back at what we did in May. So we'll have a separate video on this, but I just want to call out a couple of features that I thought were quite cool. So we added support for failure monitoring for Logic App Standards. So that was the data monitoring is a feature we have in the product that we use for a number of different resource types, where we're looking at things like the run history to see what happened when we last failures and can we trigger alerts for it. So sometimes you have resources where the metrics aren't particularly great for driving like a failure of a run. So in the case of a Logic App standard, the metrics tell you about certain specific things at the app level, but it doesn't really tell you about did an individual workflow fail. So we can enable Logic App monitoring and that'll trigger alerts. We added support for Service Bus to handle larger messages and a few other enhancements. Around Service Bus APIM was quite an interesting one. So we had support for operations and APIs, but we added more advanced features around the namespace itself, so you can just get more monitoring and management of that. We also did some quite cool stuff around profiles. So profiles are a way where you can decide how you want to sort of manage and monitor specific types of resources. So we had support on a profile to say things like every Logic app I add that gets monitored by these profiles. Here's the metrics I want you to look after. So you define the metrics you want once, and then it automatically gets applied to every Logic app. But we had a whole bunch of other resources that we've added support to the profile for. So that should just aim to make it easier to set up your monitoring. We also added a bunch of features around BAM for group level. So we had monitoring and management at the sort of business process level, but often you would have a group of business processes and you couldn't see holistically across those processes what's happening. So that you can now do that, and I'd definitely recommend taking a look at that feature, which is really cool. It integrate, we announced the support for BizTalk, so we can have customers who are doing BizTalk to Azure migrations. You can add monitoring of BizTalk into BAM, which will help with your transition story from BizTalk to Azure, so you can get people used to supporting business transactions in BAM for both BizTalk and Logic apps, as well as functions, APIM, and everything else. We did some improvements on Cost Analyzer, so a whole bunch of stuff here around making it easier to configure what you want your scope, what cost you want it to look at, and being able to forecast certain costs. So there was a load of great stuff in May. As I say, there's a separate video about that, which I'd recommend checking out now. For June, what we're looking at today is we've got a few features in business applications. So these ones here are around the idea of in a business application, I might want to have like a maintenance window where I want to disable everything and then turn it back on again when it's done. So at the minute, in both Azure and Serverless 360, you'd go and have to do that with individual resources. But at the application level, you could say, right, disable, and we would go and turn off all the resources. Like say if it's full of Logic apps or web apps or something, we'd go and just shut them all, like turn them all into the off or disabled state, and then you can one-click turn them all back on, which we think really helps people out for maintenance windows particularly. We've got some nice reports we'll take a look at group level. So we can, the idea here is you can get a group of applications, you can get one report, and you can just see how things are looking. So we've got in BAM, we've had some designer support for the query. So previously, you would just type a query that you wanted to execute, and we found that particularly business users prefer to have some designer support for that. So we can enable them to do better self-service. So we'll take a look at that in this video. In document, we've added support to customize the diagrams, and there's a bunch of diagram improvements. So we'll have a look at some of them. With Cost Analyzer, we've got some really cool features. So at the minute, we've got optimization. We've added support for optimizing SQL Azure. The idea is you can scale up or scale down your Azure SQL database based on the schedule, just like we already support with VMs and app services and a few other things. So we think this just becomes really easy to get better value for money by scaling down those SQL databases and scaling them up when you need it. So really good for, particularly for non-production environments as well. Right sizing is a big sort of theme in the industry at the minute. So we've added support for being able to recommend potential changes based on analysis of the usage of your stuff. So let's take a VM, for example. If we see a VM's not being heavily utilized, looks like it's got capacity, we might make a recommendation to scale that down. And then we can help you understand what potential savings might be. So this is about trying to give you advice and help on improving the environment. We've added some general features to help managing, like monitoring the health of the serverless 360 environment itself. So obviously when we host it on a SaaS platform, we take care of a lot of that for you, but we're given visibility of that components are all healthy. If you host it yourself, so with Serverless 360, we offer private hosting where you can host the application in your own Azure infrastructure. This health of the environment will let you basically just see everything's running nicely. There's no problems and everything. So we just think that gives people increased confidence in the solution. It gives them the ability to do some troubleshooting if there's something they think might not be right. I think I forgot to mention this one actually. So in Service Bus, we also have the ability to, when we do dead letter resubmissions, we can filter them. So let's say I've got 100 messages on my dead letter queue. I only want to resubmit ones where they've got a certain property on them. So maybe I've got like a message type, and I want to resubmit all the ones of message type A, but skip the ones of message type B. So we can have that set up as an automated task, and then you would just run it, and that's how it would work. At this point, we'll take a look at a few of these features and let you see what they look like. So we take a look at a couple of the features we've got in this June release. The first one I want to show people is the ability to disable and enable applications at the app level. So here, let's take an example of in my integration area, I've got my human resources on board and app demo. So if you were at the Integrators Summit, you would have spotted these demos. Now, I've got a business application here, and you can see it's got quite a few resources in it. So it's got things like logic apps, APIs, service bus. Now, let's pretend we've got a real world application rather than a demo. The chances are you might have a lot of resources in here, like functions, app services, logic apps, and that kind of thing. So when you have a maintenance window, you've got a lot of things to do to turn it off and then turn it back on. You have to do that really at the resource level. So what we've added is the ability here at the application level to do a management operation. Now that pops a little window up, and you can basically choose one of two options, either start and enable or stop and disable, and that'll basically go and run and just turn off what it can, stop and or disable it, and then when your maintenance window's over, you can turn that back on again at one click effectively as well. So it's just to make them maintenance windows much easier to manage. Next up, we've got the group level status reports. So over here, if I take my integration platform, you can see I've got this folder which has my integration area under it. So we've got a bunch of applications for managing different common services within the platform and platform level assets. And then we've got applications for all of the different key interfaces for each department. So what I want to be able to do is, if you imagine I come in and I look at this and I get the overview of what's going on here, it's easy to see where the problems might be. I also would get alerts based on certain resources going into an unhealthy state. But what I might want to do is just get like a status report telling me how things are going. So in the integration area, we'll go and have a look at the summary monitoring here. So what I'm able to do is create a summary alert for business applications, and I'm going to include all of the sub applications within this group. So in this case, I've said, can you at 5 p.m. every day just send me a summary alert of how it's going? So if you imagine, let's say we're managing the integration team, and the manager of integration needs to provide a report of the health of the system to his boss or his key stakeholders. So this is really what this use case is about, and I'm going to get a notification over email, and I can choose channels to alert on as well. So I've got Teams, for example. Once I've got that configured, you can see here I've had an alert, which is my summary business report. Summary report of business applications. So I can see here I've currently got one application in the error state, 18 in the unhealthy state. Now, this report was actually from a little bit earlier today than when I'm recording now. And you can see here the applications in the error state are listed here, and I can click and jump to that application if I want to click through and see what the problem is. So we'll see that'll load up there. So I can jump straight to the problem. You can see I've had a few issues here. And then I can see all of the applications that are in a healthy state, and I've got quite a few of these. So here's an easy way just to get, maybe you want a daily email every morning when everyone comes to work. What's the current state of our environment? So you could on the tree work out where your area is. So if you're the integration team, or if you're the data platform team, or you look after some websites, you could configure it at that level. But that lets you just get them summary alerts to tell you how things are going. Next up, we're going to look at a couple of things in the cost analyzer area. So over here, if we take a look at SQL optimization first, if I click on my node here for managing my integration area, so under the optimizer, I'll be able to create a schedule. We'll add some more stuff to it. So I'm going to say I want everything to be turned off and turned on. Turned on between 9 and 6, turned off at other times. So that'll hopefully give me some good cost savings. And by turned on and off, what we really mean is either turn it off or scale it down, turn it on, scale it up. There's really the two paradigms there. So what I can do is I can choose, we've had support for a while for other features here. We've added SQL databases. And you can see I've got a few databases here. So I've got a couple, I've got my BAM database as an example. So I'll look to optimize that. So what we'll be doing here is we're going to decide how we want to configure the database when it's up and when it's down. So I can say, right, we're on the standard tier. So when it's up, I'll have it at, say, 20 DTUs. And when it's down, I might say move it to 10 would be a good example. So if we just increase the size of that there. So I'll say, right, when it's up, we'll have it at 20 DTUs with, let's see, 40 gig of data. And when it's down, I'm going to move it to standard, and we'll have it at 10 DTUs, but we'll leave the data the same. So I can halve the cost pretty much there by optimizing that. You can see it shows me the expected cost saving there. So I'm going to leave the other databases alone, and I'm just going to configure this one. But basically, you can make it as easy as configuring the databases by choosing the plan and the size and stuff, and then it'll fit on the schedule that we picked previously. So this is the schedule where it'll run. And then I can create an alert for myself So I'm going to leave it. I can either say just tell me if the schedule fails for some reason, or I can just get it to confirm everything's done. So if we set that up here, see my schedule's now running, and that'll basically set it so Serverless 360 will go and check every hour what it expects that database to be, and if it should change it, then it'll resize that database. And it's pretty much as simple as that, to set up a schedule, and we've added SQL support for that. So next up, we've got right sizing. So to check right sizing, I'm over here in my window and I go to the optimization area and I click the right sizing tab. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to look at some of the resources that that we have support for right sizing, and it's going to try and make recommendations of things you might want to change. Now, what you would see here under the recommendation, you can see there's a list showing the different types of recommendations. So no change means it's already at the optimum skew based on what we're seeing as your usage. Downgrade would recommend lowering it. Upgrade would recommend increasing it because it's being quite heavily used, and idle indicates it's not being used for 7 days, so we might be able to get rid of it. So here you can see everything's coming up as fine, but if we click on one, you can see it would open it up and it would show you the usage you've been getting, what the current setup is, and any kind of recommendation. So that this one's the one where it's recommending the same, but this would just help give you some guidance around possible cost savings by changing the configuration of your resources. Next, we want to take a look at the health environment health setup. So over here, you can see this is the new feature we've configured and built for checking how your instance of Serverless 360 is running. So I can see here all of the key subsystems, so business application, business apps, the monitoring service is running fine. There's been no errors. You can see the BAM components, so the tracking's running fine, the SQL's good, the event queuing's good. There's no errors being reported recently. You can look at some, and you can see there's some logs here. I think I had a log earlier about a timeout talking to the BAM database, I think. But if you get any errors, you'll see them showing up in the log here. And really, it's just to let you have some visibility of how things are going. So this instance here is a SaaS instance, so I'll see a little bit of data. We think it'll be very helpful for people who are using private hosting where it's not running on our infrastructure, it's in your own Azure subscription. So I hope you enjoyed the little look through some of those features on the last slide there. Now, what I want to do is just give people a bit of a flavour of some of the things we're going to be doing in the next release. So we have a product roadmap of stuff we want to implement, but we also have a lot of customer suggestions and customer requests. And based on the current plan, this is the things we think we'll be working on towards the July release. We do have the ability for customers to make requests that can be done pretty quickly. So we've had a lot of that in the past of key features people have asked for. At the moment, we're looking at support for Python function apps. We're looking at doing some enhancements for function monitoring. So we've added a bunch of stuff recently for things like API management and functions and logic apps around just taking the monitoring to the next level. So with function apps, we'd like to be able to just use this data monitor capability we've got to look for functions that are erroring. We're going to do some improvements around event grid automated tasks. So if you saw a video a few weeks ago we released showed some of our repair and resubmit capabilities. And in particular, we were looking at resubmitting event grid to an API endpoint. So we're going to look at being able to set those up as automated tasks, so you could maybe do a resubmit of all of the events that failed today. Maybe would be an example. In BAM, so the BizTalk pack that we introduced did integrate. We're going to make a couple of enhancements to that and add some new features and make a couple of tweaks to it. Documenter, so we've got a few customers have asked about reports for user auditing. So I think there's some good opportunities around this kind of thing. And we'll be introducing a report that'll look at the users' RBAC access. So you'll be able to audit who has access to what across your environment. So I've had lots of customers in the past where they need to be able to work out who has access to what for various compliance activities, and it takes quite a bit of time to do that. And we want to just be able to one-click generate the report when we need it, and we think people will find that really valuable. It's something we need as well for um, our own sort of management on the SaaS side of various products that Kovi have. So that's something we're doing for us, but we think it'll also help other customers, and we've had people ask for similar things as well. Um, so with Cost Analyzer, we're adding a feature aimed at optimizing the cost of Logic app consumption. If you take an example where you have a recurrence or a polling trigger that's constantly triggering a Logic app to do something. So a great example here would be, I've got a Logic app that's constantly polling service bus looking for messages, but there's no data to process. Every trigger has a small cost which can increase. So if I've got a few hundred Logic apps across 3 or 4 environments that are constantly hitting service bus, that tiny cost adds up. So what we're thinking is, for non-production environments, there's a good cost saving potentially just by disabling those Logic apps when they're not being used. So for example, in non-prod, you might just turn them off when it's not office hours. And with with Cost Analyzer, we'll make it really easy to configure that schedule, and you can just choose which Logic apps you want disabled and enabled whenever. So that's that one. And the last one is, we're looking to do a few improvements to the user management module. So at the minute, user access is managed on the individual module basis, and we have 4. So we want to just make that a bit easier for people to manage holistically as we grow the product. So that's the key things we're looking at working on now. I'm sure there'll be other things that we add to the list, and possibly requests that come up. But hopefully we can tell you a little bit more about this early next month. Once we've done the release, we'll do some videos showing people what we've done. Now, if any of this is of interest, we'd love to schedule a demo with people and show them a bit more about these features and all of the other great stuff Serverless 360 does. Here's a link to get a request and a QR code. We hope to catch you very soon, and take care.